Good evening. Hello. Hope you had a good week. It's been an interesting week here. Um, Exciting in lots of ways. It's one of the times of year that I really love. As bit by bit, the water begins to reclaim parts of the moor and the water meadows that get flooded every year intentionally. They begin to release water onto those, and some of the local waterways begin to flood the flat land that surrounds us. It is truly awe-inspiring. Of course, it's awe-inspiring if you're still safe, warm, and dry. And sadly, this year with extreme levels of rainfall over the last few days, really over the last week and a half, not everybody has had so well as we have. Surface water flooding is a really big problem in this part of the country. And so while we are delighted with the way in which the wildlife gets pushed closer to the house, and we get to see a lot of the water birds coming right into the fields which are now flooded around us, we're aware of the difference. And if anything, this year it's been more extreme. Our little lad has got very excited about one of the science shows that we watch with him, because they've been talking about extreme weather events. And he loves the idea of extreme weather, of blizzards and tsunamis. And the latest thing has been tornadoes. And so I had a very difficult conversation with him today as I was talking about the fact that we have friends who have been affected by the tornadoes that have gone through Tennessee this last sort of 48 hours. So far, everybody that we've heard from is doing okay. So we're very grateful to God for that. But trying to explain to him why we were worried, because obviously to him, a tornado is just a tornado. He has no way of understanding how dangerous or how terrifying they might be. And so that was quite an interesting contrast. His reaction when the wind gets up here is to be excited, but he doesn't really like being out in it. And yet when he thinks about tornadoes, which he isn't expecting to happen anytime soon in Somerset, at least nothing bigger than a little one that might move the odd trampoline about, they're so detached from him, he just gets excited about the thought of wind at that speed and the forces of nature and the lightning and the rain. And how you receive a situation is very much dependent on its potential impact on you. And so just for a few minutes tonight, I want to talk about how different people receive this season of celebration and what our response should be. I know primarily I'm talking to people that would call themselves followers of Jesus, but actually I believe it's the right response for all of us. You see, it's not just about the people that have obvious practical challenges this year. We've already spoken about blessing people and caring for people. We've already dealt with the way we respond to how people choose to celebrate, not putting pressure on people or creating this illegitimate idea of what should be and shouldn't be that forces people into difficult places. But even for those who have got the practicalities together, for whom it seems to be that everything is beautiful, I don't think anybody goes through their lives for any length of time without this season bringing up lots of mixed emotions. Beautiful memories, precious, cherished memories of people that we've loved and who've been a part of our lives, family members long since gone home to glory, long since left us, people that maybe just practicalities mean this year we won't see them. And there'll be times when right in the midst of the joy of it, there'll be that emotional pull. For most of us, these next few weeks, there will be times when we experience a real depth of emotion. And there'll be moments of extraordinary joy as well, real just bubbling over happiness. There'll be times of silliness and times of exhaustion. And so how are we supposed to respond? And is there a biblical pattern for how we should respond? You know, in evangelical circles, particularly, I guess, in more sort of charismatic circles, there's been a lot of talk these last maybe 5-10 years about how you should change the atmosphere. We're there to change the atmosphere. And don't get me wrong, we should come with the peace of God. And so where there is distress, where there is a state that is not a state of peace, we should bring the peace of God, and we should seek to share that with others. And where there is a dejection, where there is a sense of hopelessness, we should bring a sense of hope. Although I've always been of the opinion the best way to bring hope is to change people's circumstances so that it's real. It's not just an emotional state. Biblical hope is actually an expectation of something that is good and is going to happen. But strangely enough, right in the middle of talking about spiritual service, right in the middle of a place where Paul is laying it on the line about how we are meant to give ourselves living sacrifices, to serve as the priests whose ministry comes from the fact that we are the children of the great high priest, that we are the ones that Jesus leads, that Jesus has made the sacrifice. And so now our ministry is worship and adoration and the care of the people around us. And in the midst of that extraordinary passage that starts, therefore I beseech you, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable service. In our translations, really, it speaks of the service, the priestly service of the logikos, those who are the offspring of Christ, the Logos. But he goes on later on in Romans 12, verses 14 and 15, and says this: bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice, and weep with those who weep. You know, I think it would be easier if he just picked one of them. If he just said, weep with those who weep. Said, okay, that's a position we'll put ourselves in. That's a single mind state. That's an easy linear route to take. And actually, sometimes it can be a tempting route to take. There are times when there is a stillness, where there's a lack of activity, where there is a sense of, well, under those circumstances, I know what to do. But he doesn't just say, weep with those who weep. He says, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Well, okay, then I'm more into the rejoicing. I'll do the rejoicing with those who rejoice. But the challenge is that we should be flexible in our pattern of behavior so that it's appropriate to the circumstances and the emotional state of the people that we're around. Sometimes we want to change people's mood. And don't get me wrong, I believe with all my heart that there is a place for binding up broken hearts and for lifting the head of those who are downtrodden. There is a place for us to step in and say, actually, I want to share with you the joy of the Lord. But Paul says there is a time and a place where what you need to do is you need to engage with their emotional state. You need to engage with their circumstances. You need to accept that where they are really is where they are. And there are times when the very greatest thing you can do, the best service, the most kindness you can show is to shut up and participate. And if they're rejoicing, literally, if they're glad, if they're excited, if they greet you with great joy, then you should do the same. I always used to chuckle about the fact that everybody gets excited about their own child's pictures. They're so excited. Look what my child has drawn. And I used to imagine that it was just something that would happen. That once we had one of our own, we would be just very excited about what had been drawn, that we would somehow see things in it that we weren't seeing. And whilst I am delighted in the process, when I get to sit and participate in what he's doing, and whilst I'm thrilled with his excitement and his delight, I'm not seeing things that aren't there, and I'm not seeing often things that he tells me are there. And I know the difference between a good one and a bad one, but I'm not going to be showing them to anybody else anytime soon. My delight, it turns out, is in him. It's not in the picture. It's in the process. It's in how they change from time to time. It's in how his skills develop and grow. Those things are wonderful. And sometimes he's really excited about something. And because he's not just got my love of music and singing and instruments and frankly making any kind of noise, but he's also got some things he's picked up from his mother about color and shape and form. He already sees the world in a way I don't see the world. But when he's excited, I try and participate in his excitement. It's easy to do with someone that you love. But the context of this is verse 14. It's about those that you don't love and those who don't love you. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. It's easy to feel emotionally moved by the emotional state of people that you're close to. But what about the people that you're not close to? I know these next few weeks, whether it's out and about, just getting on with our lives, or it's in family gatherings, or it's at the workplace, or it's at those big school celebrations where all the things that happen with nativities and school shows and end of year, and we're going to be meeting with people, encountering people, speaking to people. And maybe we have no comprehension of what they're going through. But the clear command of Scripture is when they're rejoicing, we should rejoice. And when they're weeping, we should weep. Famously, Coldplay said, "I'm going to fix you." It's a natural human desire to resolve the problems that people face. It comes out of a good place, out of compassion, to say, I'm going to try and resolve this. But sometimes before we get there, we need to allow the sorrow of those around us to impact on the way we engage with them, so that if they are weeping, we weep too. If they're in mourning, we mourn too. And it was as I was reading that I began to think about the one word that appears in both of those statements, and it's with. See, in the New Testament, there are three ways in which the concept of with is understood. One is the most common, which is N, and it's really in and with and by. It's probably the most intimate, the most directly engaged type of with. It's an inseparable kind of with. It's a as they go, I go. As they do, I do. It's fully engaged. It's used in some places, translated as by. And there's another one, which is about shared endeavor, shared enterprise, shared risk, shared experience. That's sun. And sun, it's normally used as a prefix. And so it's this idea of being directly, personally engaged together. It's participation in, it's shared experience. The one that's used here is meta.
And meta is interesting in the Greek, and particularly in the New Testament, because it's the word that's used. And at Christmas, we think about this, that Jesus is known, one of his many names is Emmanuel, God with us. And the with there is meta. God with us. That is to say, fully committed to us, fully present with us, present in power, present in compassion, present in mercy, present in experience. But his state and status were not changed by ours. When Jesus weeps at the graveside of Lazarus, it's not because he's not the resurrection. It's not because he's not about to raise his friend back to life again. It's not because he's unaware of that, or because he is somehow in any way overwhelmed by what overwhelms those who are legitimately in mourning. But as they weep, he weeps. And they said, see how much he loved his friend. He's not weeping from the same place that they are. He's weeping because he has come and he is God with them. When I think of Emmanuel, God with us, I don't think of God facing the problem with the same dilemmas and questions and uncertainties that I have. I don't think about God facing the same emotional response that I have, but I am amazed and grateful and encouraged and challenged and comforted by the fact that he is familiar with my feelings of weakness. But they didn't stop him, break him, cause him to sin or despair, because he was still God. He was God with us. His state and his status, his ability to meet the need, were never changed. There are going to be people over the next few weeks that you might meet, and they're rejoicing in things that you don't want to be caught up rejoicing in. They're going to be rejoicing in things that maybe you don't understand or you don't wish to participate in. But you can still be joyful in your response to them when they treat you, speak to you, greet you with joy. And the challenge of Romans 12 for us to weep with those who weep, to engage with the pain, the sorrow, the hurt, the loss, whatever it is they're going through, is not that we might also have that same hurt, loss, pain, sorrow, but that we might be present with them in it. It's meta. That our state and our status shouldn't be changed. When we weep with those who are sorrowful, it is not that the joy is no longer our strength. It is not that we don't have the be at peace in Jesus, who's become our peace and left his divine peace with us. It's not that we somehow suddenly can't rely on him to be our strong deliverer. But we are called to weep with them because we participate in their experience without our status or state in Christ being affected. I'm comforted because his presence, it's gentle, it's compassionate, it's merciful, it's forgiving. He comes with grace and with favor and with understanding. But I'm also comforted because he is not overwhelmed by what overwhelms me, and he is not diminished by what right now might be diminishing me. Just as he was at the graveside of Lazarus, Jesus didn't condemn the mourners. He didn't shout at them. Right up to the point where he's about to raise his friend back from the dead, to demonstrate to all those who are gathered that he is the resurrection and the life, just as he's declared it to Martha. He weeps with them. He weeps with them. Over the next few weeks, one of the greatest privileges that anyone can give you, to let them in on that part of them, that part of their life, which is still raw, is still unfiltered. And sometimes that's the joy of them letting you in on their rejoicing, on their excitement. You know, if you ever want to see somebody you didn't think was being childlike, Christmas is the time to see it. There's something beautiful about it. And there'll be things that excite people, and things that are silly, and things that are fun, and things that have to them great meaning because they're traditions that are precious to them because of their memories and their experience. And right in the midst of all that joy, there'll be moments when people are overwhelmed by the people that they're missing, by the thoughts of what has been lost, and of past experiences that were once and once only, that they never get back. And by the Spirit of God, by his grace in us for those people, we should be willing to just go whichever way they go. When they're rejoicing, to rejoice, and when they weep, to weep. And to know that it's okay, because our state and status is not changed simply because we are being compassionate, we're being open. And rather than always trying to be the ones to fix it or to calm it down, we're committed to being present. To being present in a way that shows our commitment to them. And trusting that God is the one who brings peace and comfort and joy in remembering. Don't get frustrated when all of a sudden the mood seems to shift. Don't think that everybody has to celebrate when you celebrate, or be reflective when you are. There'll be times when it will feel like it's a real sacrifice. But if you do it because you love people just as Jesus loves them, and as Paul puts it at the start of Romans 12, it's just your reasonable service. Lord bless you. Have a good week. That's our thoughts for tonight. We'll have an exciting announcement, hopefully next Sunday night, about something we've got lined up for the few days before Christmas. Just a little something to bless you, and maybe to introduce you to some other faces from the extended Harvest family. But in the meantime, whatever you're doing in your preparations, and however crazy and hectic time might be flying by right now, but I pray that you know something of the peace of Jesus, and that you experience joy. And if you are in a season of remembering, then God can be your comfort. God willing, we'll see you next Sunday night.